that wonderful introduction, and thank you, the African American men of Westchester, and the Links, and everyone, and WLS. My library story is a moment. I think it's actually the only memory I have of being in a library as a kid. But I think what it must be is a composite, and it's in Harlem. It's in the 60s. And I don't think my library had storytelling and drumming, but not yet. But it was dark. You know, I think it had the old kind, you know, dark kind of library, quiet. You couldn't talk in the library when I was a kid. And I'm checking out books. That's what it is. It's at that checkout point. And my mother is beside me, but I'm doing the checking out. And I think if I had a photograph of that moment, the caption would be a rite of passage. So, yeah, I mean, for most writers, you know, libraries have been just some resource, our refuge, and our romance, too. Also, Asha said something about, you know, one of the things about the libraries is that you learn from people who are 75 years old, 100 years old, and all that. But, you know, you also learn from people who are younger than you. It was the one and only time I think Asha and I were on a program together. I think it was in Brooklyn at the House of the Lord, and it was many, many years ago. But she talked about people in prison, and she planted a seed. So in a way, I have to thank her, because since then, it took a while for the seed to bear fruit. But I have to say, the reason I've done programs for Jane Martin, Bedford Correctional, twice, and the reason that I've talked to someone like Jim Huffman with NYPL, who I think is still doing a program at Rikers, is because of seeds that Asha planted. And the reason, too, that I got it, the reason I'm soon going to have a library of my own is an organization called Prisoners Reading Encouragement Project. And I don't know how I found them. And so now, like say, when I finish my book on King, I said, well, I'm not going to write on King. Probably for a long time. You know, I've done that. Or when I finished my book on the New Deal, on Du Bois, I said, you know what? Here I have these, because my book's kind of nice condition, you know, hardcovers. And I thought, you know what? They became like an idol. I realized my whole library would become an idol. So now my rule is when I finish a project, those bunch of books, I send them off to downtown, to Nassau Street, Manhattan, because I know that just as books feed me, have fed me, and always will feed me, there are people in prison with minds. Minds alive, minds hungry, minds curious, and people who need books. And I tell you, having been to Bedford, and Jane's doing a great job, and look around at their library, some of the books in their library, and I thought, this is wrong. Prisoners shouldn't have books from the 1950s. You know, and don't be donating your Reader's Digest condensed version books like that. So, you know, so it was a book. I had I guess it was that Pulitzer Prize winning biography of Frederick Douglass. I was like, no, this goes to the prison. And then, of course, I'm doing something project on the answer, and I'm like, oh, wow, I need that Frederick Douglass book. But the one thing I realized is that back to libraries. When I look at most of the books that I held on to with pride, and I need this for my research, I realize if I go online, NYPL, I put in the title, many times it's like, and it's not at my library, oh, you want it? Tell us where you want to. And then 5 days later, I get a phone call from a computer that says, come to your branch and pick up your book. And I thought, so I can get another copy of that Frederick Douglass biography because of libraries. Because of all that's been invested over the years. So I just pray God that I got another $10 to go on Amazon and buy the book again. So as you can tell, that when I was a kid, yes, to me, libraries were awesome in the original sense of the word. You know, when I was a kid, I not only loved reading and loved the whole feel of books, but I also loved writing. And when I was a kid, and people said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, teacher. So, you know, I feel really blessed that I get to earn my daily bread by reading, writing, and teaching. One of mine, I didn't forget my glasses. One of my books is about a man we honor today. The title is MLK, Journey of a King. And the way and some of the what of the book was inspired in part by something a high school teacher said to me a few years ago. I think I was doing a program for NYPL in the 90s. And the kids had come and we were chatting, and she said, were you working on it for the book on King? And she said, you know, a lot of my students pretty much consider me chump. And at first I thought, oh, how can they, how dare, what is wrong, you know? And then I stopped and I thought about it and I realized that, you know, if we have people growing up in a society that we created, a society that exalts greed and materialism, a society that confuses meekness with weakness, and a society that promotes selfishness and self-centeredness, how can I be surprised by the fact that the children would be confused, that they would, if you ask them, I know when they got to show up for those little reports to do those little programs, they say, oh yes, he was a great man who had a dream. But you know, a lot of times they're like, and why should I be surprised that so many children today wouldn't think of revering somebody who was about things of the spirit? Because that's something that they don't see modeled every day, every hour of every day.